welcome to the continuation of a general modeling and workspace overview here at BlueCaps. The purpose of this website, this Google site, and ultimately this tutorial is to help newcomers and hobbyists, anyone interested in using a 3D animation or rendering program, to be better acquainted, help transition into the seat of the maker of the Blender. Blender's great, go download it, it is free, it is amazing, and I recommend it. The focus of this particular tutorial is understanding the 3D view orientation. In short, this tutorial will hopefully cover some of the ways to manipulate the 3D view window to allow for easier navigation through the virtual space. Some amount of mastery concerning 3D view orientation can be crucial to designing Blender. If anyone in the audience already knows that they have good bearings as far as navigating 3D environments, you may want to skip this tutorial, although I would advise against it. I'll try to cover not just basic orientation, but also some principles of orthographic design and isometric design, which are actually two common practices in modern 3D engineering. I'll also go into cameras just a little bit, and help to show how camera orientation can affect the rendering view that is presented through this application of Blender. As basic as most of this stuff is, I also advise going through and reading through the first part of the general modeling and workspace overview, aptly named Understanding and Manipulating Windows. I am going to be using a couple of the major concepts from this last tutorial for this new one. I know going through the slide presentation can be painful, but I spent a lot of time on it, so go forth and learn the window making if you already haven't. Anyway, once again, here we have the default Blender screen. Forgive me for the poor quality of the video. I know words and images can be blurry, so I will try to give as much away as possible in the audio. This tutorial doesn't concern words too much, but if there's any important buttons to click, I will throw up a caption in the general area and try to explain it. Right, so you will remember that Blender opens two sub-windows upon ignition. The top one is the 3D Views window, and the bottom one is the Buttons window. You will not be needing this button windows for the 3D View orientation seminar, so the first thing I want you to do, or at least pay attention to me doing, is shrinking this window down, so as to provide more room for the 3D View window. Now that the 3D View window is larger, which will give us some more room to work with, there are three objects you will notice in the window. The first is at the bottom right. It's this little pointy triangle with sides. That is a Blender camera. The second object, the circle with the dotted lines around it towards the right, is a light source. The third, final, and most important object for this tutorial is a mesh cube. I am not going to explain what a mesh is yet, partly because you do not need to know, and partly because it's kind of hard. Suffice it to say that the square you're seeing on your screen is really just the top face of a virtual cube, and it's not only left and right, as you can see on a normal square, but there's actually a forward and backward direction on this cube, as is there on any box or playing dice. We commonly refer to 3D spaces having three axes, so I think it might be important to go through these axes. Blender sure thinks it is. They're common mathematical axes. Most people remember the x-axis and the y-axis. X-axis running left to right and the y-axis running up and down. The same applies here. The red arrow is pointing in the forward x direction, and the y arrow is pointing in the forward y direction, up direction. Not up as in up as in up as you see it now, yes. It gets more confusing than this even. The z-axis, the third axis, you can't see it right now because it is pointing at you. Actually, the z-axis is the blue dot in the center of the square. You probably see it. You don't realize it's an arrow because you're seeing just the top of it and it's pointing right at you. So I think it's best if we just jump right into the space and learn how to rotate the viewer. Hold the middle mouse button down, anywhere, in empty space, not anywhere, anywhere in empty space. Do not hold it down on the camera, do not hold it down on the light source, and do not hold it down on the cube. This will do bad things. Bad things we do not want. While holding down the middle mouse button, and may I repeat, while holding down the middle mouse button, move your mouse. Do not let go of the middle mouse button as you do this. This is called click and drag. It is a fairly simple operation. Anyone on a computer nowadays probably should know how to do it. Right, so what you're seeing right now, yeah, it looks more like a cube now, doesn't it? That's because it is a cube, or at least a virtual cube. What we're doing, what I'm mouse called free rotation. It's called free rotation because you're doing it with your hand. There's no linear constraint. There's no real mathematical constraint. I mean, the entire thing is mathematical, mechanical, genius, brilliant, and hypnotizing, but it is free rotation because it is not perfect. And of course, with things that are not perfect, there are problems. And the problem with free rotation is that the mouse picks up on a lot of erratic movements, and it is hard to rotate ourselves around this cube as perfectly as we would like. It is possible, but it is hard. Luckily, Blender has shortcut keys, and shortcut keys are great. Shortcut keys are amazing. Blender's provided us with 3 shortcut keys that we can use for quick orientation. Making sure that numpad is on, the first shortcut key is numpad 7, and it'll bring you to this scene as you see now. Looks a little familiar. Actually, this is the default orientation that Blender gives you upon opening the program. This orientation will always be synonymous, always, to looking at the cube from above, right along the z-axis, so that the x-axis, the red x-axis, points right, and the green y-axis points up. The other shortcuts are numpad 1 and numpad 3. The scene you see now is developed by pressing numpad 1, and will always orient the view so that you're now lying as if you were lying down on the ground, eye level, with the cube from behind. Notice that the green axis has been replaced by the blue z-axis, but that the red x-axis still points to the right. The final of the shortcut keys is numpad 3, and by using numpad 3, you will always orient the view so that you are now lying down on the ground, eye level with it, from its right side. The blue z-axis is still pointing straight up, but the red x-axis, has been replaced with the green y-axis. So what does this all mean? I'm going to go into greater detail with all of this directions later, but generally think of it this way. Moving along the green axis means you are moving forward or backwards. Moving along this blue axis means that you'd be moving almost like in an elevator, up and down. And of course, if you were to move, say, along the red axis, along this red line here, well, that'd be kind of like strafing left to right without changing your view. So, by pressing numpad 1, we bring the screen to what I consider the ultimate view, where you are looking forward, you have your left and right to your sides, and your blue arrow is pointing up, and of course the line is up and down. When you do integrate physics into Blender, it automatically assumes that the z-axis is the direction of real up and down. Gravity will be applied in the negative z direction.